Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Kevin McGovern with episode 17 of the Velocity RX podcast. I'm with my new partner in crime, Dr. Clay Hammonds. Today, episode, Clay, parents and their effect on the injury rate in youth baseball. I'll let that sit for a little while. And Clay and I are going to talk some kind of cringeworthy stories back and forth about parents' involvement in this. And we'll get to that in a moment. But right now, I want you to stop and hit subscribe and like on the YouTube channel that you're listening to this. So, Clay, what's up? I don't want to brag. Let me just stretch that.
Yankees World
Let me
Series.
stretch there. Oh, look at that.
My Braves are not there, man. Good for you guys. Rooting for you though, for sure.
Well, we'll see. Now, there's a lot of holes in the Yankee team, but
As I
they,
told you earlier, my pick for MVP is Juan Soto.
that's a pretty good pick. I hope he's playing with the Yankees far into the future, but I don't know. We'll see.
Costs a lot of money.
So, Clay, this when we say parents are adding to this injury rate, I'm going to tell I guess like a horror story. And then, what I think is the worst, which really gave me a wake up call this week. So for those who don't know, physical therapists and really any healthcare provider are mandatory reporters. And what that means is if we suspect abuse in the home with the child, we have to report that. And that's obviously, I've seen that one time in my career, hope to never see it again. But when you contact me, if you answer one of my Facebook ads, I have a series of questions that the parent has to fill out. And one of them is the current injury status of the child or the kid, right? And I kind of specialize between 12 and 17, 18-year-old kids. And of course, I see, shoulder, little league elbow. And, this past week I had seen little league elbow. And it was right after we had just done the podcast about little league elbow. And I got the person on the phone. The person allegedly was a healthcare provider in the massage end, and we had talked about price. I was running a big special. He told me what was happening. He told me that what the doctor had said, and if you watch the podcast about elbows, Clay went right through everything the doctor would say, and everything the doctor said, this guy said: rest, no throwing, go to physical therapy, they rub it. Well, none of which is going to fix the elbow. So the guy said, all right, well, I said, this is what has to happen. I want to be in control of the PT if you do it locally. I want to, this is what's going to happen. So it has to happen. But there's some issue in your son's mechanics that are causing little league elbow. There's no denying that. And he came back, have to ask the wife. And then he came back with, my wife thinks that we should wait the 6 weeks of rest.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I know that this guy allegedly was a healthcare provider. I didn't really ask the guy whether the wife was, but I said, did you watch the YouTube video I sent you on Little League Elbow? Yes. Okay. Well, as you know, in that video, we think that rest is one of the worst things that you could possibly do to fix Little League Elbow. And if that's the way you're going to go, I'm not saying you've got to sign up with me, but if that's the way you're going to go, I have an ethical dilemma where I can no longer market to you anymore, right? Like I'm not going to report you to DSS. Like I don't have evidence of that, but I can't market to you anymore. I think I'm in an ethical issue, and we're gonna disconnect. We're gonna disconnect. And the guy was like, okay. And I literally have been sick over that conversation this entire
Mm.
week.
Yeah, that's man, that's tough, especially when you're providing two healthcare providers who see it regularly, showing him the thorough conversation that we're having about it, and still doesn't resonate. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, so I think at that point, I've got a really good close friend who's a hitting instructor, and he says it's not the money. What it
Mm.
is they don't think you're expert enough. That someone else is in their ear. Obviously, in the medical model, the doctor has is like the god, although
Yeah.
most orthopedic surgeons couldn't tell you what any sort of pitching mechanic is at all. But the doctor becomes the god, and they won't
Yeah, just rest it.
yeah, they won't listen to another opinion. Like I just had case in point, I had a woman client that came in and who does yoga and hurt her knee in some kind of, I think it's a long-standing problem. Came back and said, "Well, the MRI said I have stress fractures." I'm like, "There's no way you have stress fractures in your leg. You know the kind of force that it takes to have stress fractures in your knee. You're not a basketball player. You're not a long distance runner. You're
Not
doing
pregnant.
yeah." I said, "There's you're not 75 years old with bone loss density. There's no way." So, and I'm not saying doctors are wrong a lot, but you have to sometimes use you have to use your common sense, right?
Oh, totally. And well, and you have to use the information that people who are experts in the actual field that you're trying to perform in give you.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere in his brain, he's somewhere. Obviously, he got a piece of information. He didn't agree with it, and then started looking, found me, contacted me. There was obviously then a price, and maybe maybe he didn't like the. I'm not sure, didn't like the price or whatever. But I'm not really sure. But to me, my mission is greater than whether you sign up for me. We've got to help kids, and now I think this kid is not being helped correctly.
Yes, and he likely won't be. But you also can't beat yourself up over it. I mean, you did all you can do, and maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll come back and realize because what I've seen in this, especially with Little League Elbow, is I used to work in a large corporate setting clinic, and you'd get the referral from the doc, Little League Elbow, you know, everything on it, modalities to do. And of course, I never really did that. I just did my own thing and try to educate them the best that I could while I was in there. Don't have the room to throw in there. Don't have the room to really, and teach the best I could in there. But, there's one kid in particular who I'm actually treating now um, who I treated for Little League Elbow prior, got it better, taught him about mechanics and this and that, but just teaching, not really going through a program because I couldn't in that setting. Um, but then this year, that's probably 2 years later, came back again. But he's also 2 years older, so now he's in high school. So
Now we're bigger,
now we're
stronger.
bigger. Now
Yep.
now our bones are growing.
Yep.
Now, right? And so the growth plate's closing, right?
Hmm.
He's 15. And so now it's not, now when I do my assessment on him, I'm like, it's not your medial epicondyle anymore. It's your UCL. Your UCL is strained and your pronator's messed up and all the muscles that are around it, right? So I go, look, now we're in a different world. Like now we're two, you're not 13 anymore. Now you're 15, right? And your UCL is screaming. As we've talked about in our other podcast on Little League Elbow. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. This will give you a lot of info about that. But so I was like, you still got crap mechanics. You're not rotating your arms, your elbows below your shoulder when you're throwing and you're pushing the ball. So you have to have valgus stress on the elbow. So now your UCL screaming. And so this is now the third week I've been treating him. We calm down the structures, taught him about mechanics, squat. And in 3 weeks now we're actually, and this may be crazy to think of, but in 3 weeks now we've moved back to 90 feet throwing, zero pain,
And
zero
what did you fix? What did you fix?
mechanics. And sequentially how he thinks of throwing, really. I mean, it's the thing that I came up with. It, you got the engine, you got the caboose, right? I asked him this question: what do you think your arm is the engine or the caboose? Well, it's the engine. No. So you have to change the athlete's mindset of, I need to use my body more, and then show them how to use their body more. And then your arm comes at the end once your body puts your arm in a good position. And then that relieves all the valgus stress on the elbow right there.
So
it's
this
so stupidly, like it's so stupidly
really
simple.
simple. So
And
this
I
is where we're
don't,
gonna pause the show.
yeah,
Parents, players, coaches, if you did not hear this theory that Clay laid down a couple of shows ago, that the arm is the caboose, you need to go and watch it, memorize it, own it. When you close your eyes, I want you to see it on the inside of your eyelids. Today's mechanics are teaching just the opposite, just like that kid just said. They are teaching that the arm is the engine. That's why you see these running guns and the flips and this and that. That's why you see them drifting and telling you to jump towards home plate. The arm is the caboose. It scientifically has to be. It's called your kinematic sequence. If it's not the caboose, it's only a matter of time before you get injured. Plain and simple.
100%. And so literally in 3 weeks, we went from this kid having tenderness over his UCL, pronator hypertonicity, flexor hypertonicity, all that, to him throwing with 85% capacity, 90 feet multiple times with no pain.
There it is.
Like, it's literally that simple, guys.
Yeah,
You don't, and guess what's not going to create that? Rest.
exactly. Well, I mean, case in point, if people have seen some of my ads, I've got a former NAIA player, Ben Bills, out of Pennsylvania. He went to a Texas ranch in Velocity Camp in January. He left there with a nice UCL strain. Two doctors told him he needed Tommy John surgery. He rested, missed his entire senior season. Thank God, Ithaca, maybe Ithaca, somewhere school up in northern New York was the only college that didn't run away from him. He came to see me in August, and in 2 days he threw 225 balls pain free.
Yeah.
Why? We fixed his mechanics and got his arm to be the caboose. He
You
went
don't
on
have
to
to
have a
stress on
six. Yep, he went on to have a successful career playing in NAIA school in Texas that included a perfect game, a no hitter, and with the COVID year, he decided that he'd like to catch. And two doctors told him he needed UCL surgery, so his career never would have started. It's, but all that being said, you have to have a parent who is willing to look somewhere else other than, and to me, it's not looking somewhere else. I mean, if he blew his arm out, he'd be at our door saying, help, 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 fix us. Well, we do a lot of preventative stuff too, right? So
it.
let's imagine how much we can do on the preventative side. You know, and the other barrier I get a lot, I'm sure you get a lot, is finances. You know, are you covered by insurance? Are you do this? And I look and be like, your
Yeah.
child is playing in three different travel ball teams, each at $3,000 to $5,000. If Perfect Game or one of those had a popped up and had a showcase, you would drop $1,500, $2,000 without thinking about it.
Mhm.
But what is the cost if your kid is injured and loses that ability to play in college? What does that cost?
Yeah.
What does that cost?
Well, and what does Tommy John surgery cost?
Right.
Or labrum surgery? Or rotator cuff surgery?
Exactly.
A lot more than the 2 grand of rehab would have cost to set you up for future success and avoid it.
So we've got the parent, the naysayer doesn't think you're an expert. We got the parent who throws nickels around like they're manhole covers. And now the third type of parent is the overbearing dad who never probably made it in the majors or never got out of high school,
Or
um,
mom.
or mom, and is pounding the child. How
Yeah.
many times have you seen that? And what kind of horror stories do you see with that?
Yeah. I mean, I can think of one in particular instance of a kid who I don't want to say too, but so he's a really good athlete, pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Was playing with an elite travel team out of Atlanta, and now is playing with one of the Braves scout teams. Is going to be a really good athlete, but was dealing with shoulder pain for over a year, and the team doctor that was the team doctor was actually a chiropractor, and so he's treating spine, thinking that's coming from a cervical region, which I agree. Always clear the spine,
100%. Yep. No argument here.
but finally, one of his middle school baseball coach at the time, now he's in high school. His middle school baseball coach at the time says, Clay, something's wrong, and so he was smart enough to send him to me, and I evaluated him, and he has a labrum tear. Like
Oof.
it's clear as day. Like just on a classic physical exam, like man, you got a labral tear. It's like we need to get this looked at. Sure enough, labral tear. We try to rehab it a little bit and talk to the throwing. Ended up having surgery. I did his rehab and have since worked with him since. And he's doing really great. But
And that's for those who don't know, you tear your labrum. That's
at,
as close to a death sentence as you can. The fact that you get this guy back throwing is amazing.
at 13,
13. Yep. Yep.
14, so 13, 14, something like that. But I do feel like there was, misinformation maybe given to the parents, and the travel ball organizations really, a lot of them, not the ones that I'm with because we're all about the kids, but there are some that just want your money, right? And they, so there's, and then once a parent pays whatever it is, 3,000, 2,000, 4,000, somewhere up, sometimes up more, that parents go, well, now I'm invested, right? And just like any smart investor, you want an ROI, so you want to see your kid play, right? It's,
Hmm.
I mean, and so they're, pushing for their kid to play, sometimes through pain. They're getting bad information from, a doctor or the team doctor who was a chiro in this instance. And until they see somebody that knows baseball and knows how to do a thorough exam, goes, dude, you got a labral tear. And all this time, it's been going on for over a year. And it was just so sad to me and heartbreaking that I had to be the one to deliver that news. Um, but I was also glad that I could get him back throwing at a high level, and he's actually doing really really good right now. So
That
uh,
is that's really impressive.
yeah,
Very impressive.
but that's my kind of horror story, and and it's like I said before, I don't think that I don't want to put it out there that like all parents are bad. I think that you do have
No, not at
some
all.
overbearing parents, but I also think that when you're in the travel ball world, especially, and you're throwing a lot of money on the line, of course you want to see your kid play. Like it's
Yes.
like I said, you want an ROI, like
Yep.
I
That's
want
yep.
to go, I want to see him play, and you're going to do anything you can to do that, but sometimes like you just gotta step away and go get a real opinion about what's going on.
So mine, we have to take the way back meter. Go back about 10 or 12 years ago. This is when I had my insurance-based practice. I was still treating a fair amount of baseball pitchers. I had a file. The guy was coming in, and he was. What I did back then is I had my underling, my other therapist do the normal PT, and then I stepped in when we did mechanics, right? Um, the father comes in, hey, can I talk to you? Yeah, 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 talk to me. So I've been looking on the internet about elective Tommy John surgery. I don't even think he got out of his mouth. And I'm like, dude, get out of my office. Are you kidding
Ah,
me? And I'm like, there's no way. So I'm like, there's no way this could be. But I looked it up. You Google it, it's there. Elective, like, let's get elective Tommy John surgery. Like it's some sort of preventative measure. Like I'm
shoot,
like, are you
that's
what have we
nuts.
what have we come to in this society? Like what? elective Tommy John surgery, and it's
Yeah, like I
there.
know there was that thing at one time. They were saying like if you have Tommy John, you'll throw harder.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, that's because, for those who don't know, I mean, they make, they take your palmaris longus, which is that tendon that's popping up right there, and they, double it, triple it. They make it thicker. But guess what? Guys are still blowing it out a second time. So, yeah, elective Tommy John surgery.
That's
I couldn't
wild.
believe it.
Like, why would you do that to your kid?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't even have an answer for it.
Like, hey, go have surgery, and then because you may throw 3 miles an hour harder, but I don't even think the research suggests that, right? Like,
I don't. Yeah, I don't even know.
especially if you're not changing anything mechanically that caused it in the first place, or
I
supposedly
don't
going to
even
cause it in
know.
the first place. That's wild.
But on a side note, tonight is the beginning of the World Series, and we do have two teams that I think are playing for the 12th time. On a uglier note, there are, if you look up and go into their injury history, these two teams are in at least the top five of most injured pitchers, both the Yankees and the Dodgers. They both have pitchers that are out. They both have position players that are out with Tommy John surgery. I know there was an article in a couple people had sent in the Athletic or something out there where you actually had to be a member to get the information, but there are a couple of reporters banging on Dodger doors asking what's happening here. Now, there's no surprise that Mark Pryor, who was once said had the most perfect mechanics, which is 180 degrees opposite of the truth, yet some of the worst mechanics, is their pitching coach. You know, and the Yankees pitching coach, I know for a fact, is from this area, and one of my friends about 15 years ago, um, his job for the first month was to teach him how to give pitching lessons, and now he is the pitching coach for the New York Yankees. So, take that as you will, but the Yankees currently have at least five former pitchers who were on the squad last year that are out with elbow injuries, and their star center fielder. The reason why the Yankees have Juan Soto to begin with is that their star center fielder, the Martian, tore his ulnar collateral ligament throwing a ball in from the outfield, and the Yankees needed to replace him, and that's why they signed Juan Soto. Turned out to be pretty good, but that's the reason why.
Wait, so Jason Dominguez?
Jason Dominguez is coming off
I
Tommy
didn't
John surgery.
I didn't
Sure
know
is.
he tore his UCL.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Oh
Yep.
wow.
So
I
he
did not
came.
know
So
that.
he tore. So he, obviously outfielders come back earlier, but Jason
Yeah.
Dominguez tore it at the end of so he pitched. He came up last September, played 10 games, tore his UCL, came back sometime late summer, and boom. Yep.
How did I miss that? Okay. But
Because
so he's back on.
you're one of those Braves fans.
I know.
Yeah.
But I like to keep up with it all. But so wait, but he's on the roster now, like in the playoff.
He's on the roster.
Playoff roster.
He
Okay.
hasn't seen any time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the Yankees have another outfielder um who's in their top 10 like of players, right? Who's also out with Tommy John surgery. It's insane to me. I mean,
Yeah.
so
And
dig a little
that's
deep on both of their teams, and don't just dig last year, dig the last 3 years. Michael King, who pitched for San Diego, who I think they traded Juan Soto, actually fractured his elbow 2 years ago. Like, actually broke his elbow. The only time I ever remember a pitcher breaking their arm, when I was a little kid, there was a guy from the San Francisco Giants named Dave Dravecki who threw a pitch on live TV and his arm broke in the upper part. Why? Because he had cancer. So these injuries are like unfathomable that outfielders and position players are tearing their UCL, and pitchers are breaking things, like breaking out, like breaking. I don't know what to say. What say you?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking as you were talking about that, I was like, what other position besides pitcher is most vulnerable to that? And I would say an outfielder because of the sheer velocity and force they have to produce at such a long distance to throw. And when you're
Yep.
doing that, the mechanics aren't, as we know through like long toss, like the mechanics on flat ground long toss, like aren't great,
Horrible.
right? Like
Nope.
they're horrible because you're just trying to rear back and throw it as hard as you can on flat ground. And yeah, so I could see how that position would be the next most vulnerable behind pitcher.
Yeah. So, um, it's quite sad, but those two, and they're two of the top teams that are, I guess can afford injuries, right? Because they have the highest payrolls. But you
Yeah.
know, before you watch the pregame show today, and maybe they'll talk about it. Maybe I mean, and now the Yankees um have another pitcher who might go down again. I mean, in Nestor Cortez, right? So he went out with an elbow injury, and they gave him a PRP injection, and apparently he's like, well, I guess I could try to win a ring and miss all of next year. So his elbow must be, I'm assuming he's going to be the next one, hanging by a thread. You had Garrett Cole miss a bunch of time this year. Thank God he was able to come back. But Garrett Cole's mechanics are they're not perfect, but they're solid. Nestor Cortez is all over the place. Um, yeah, and then of course Yamamoto was injured. Glasnow was injured. Walker Bueller is out. I mean, it's just a laundry list of
Hey.
pitchers out injured.
Yep. And it's just getting worse. And I mean, I saw a stat the other day. It was like if you took, I'm sure you've seen this too, but there was that period in the 90s where they took, it was like a 4-year period, right? It was like from like 95 to 99. The number of injuries of pitchers from that period to just last year alone has doubled. From a
Hmm.
4-year period in the 90s to just last year, that number of pitching injuries has doubled.
Yeah,
Major League
and
Baseball.
that's just a Major League Baseball. That doesn't
That's
count.
just in Major League. Yeah.
That just doesn't count the youth level where we have many, 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 many more people playing youth baseball than we do have in the major league. So God knows what that number's like.
So this is a good question, Kevin. So if you're a parent, so if you're a parent of a youth baseball player from, 8 years old to 13, 14, 15 years old, what are some things that you may need to be educated on to keep your child from injury? Or, what are some things that you need to do to ensure that they, have health and success moving forward?
Great question, and I think it's our healthcare system is lacking, right? So every kid can't participate in middle school or high school sports, or even maybe even youth sports. I think without a sport physical. What does a sport physical consist of? Right? Blood pressure, bend over and touch your toes, like nothing that's going to save anyone from injury. So I would get your child with a sport physical therapist, pay for a head to toe evaluation, a movement evaluation, head to toe, major joints, everything like that. Because if the child doesn't have correct basic human movement, he or she is going to get hurt because we're going to add athletic movement on top of a bad base. And that's like you said, you can't build a building in sand. It's gonna collapse. So there's enough of us around. Um, Go to someone in private practice, find out, we'll do an evaluation and get your child moving correctly, especially if they are going to pitch. Okay. It's the only sport that I know of where the instruction could lead you to the operating room.
Mhm.
The only thing I know.
That's awesome. I agree completely. Um, what do you think about early specialization in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, that was when I was growing up, and even, I mean, you're 10 years younger than me. We never had that. There was never any thought, I remember the first thing that was in my area was like 5-star basketball camp. None of this travel sports. We just went out and played different sports, different season. I don't see that anymore. And I don't know if it's the early specialization or if it's the only specialization, meaning that the only time the kid actually does anything is when we're going and playing that sport.
Right.
Besides that, they're in front of the TV, on the phone, or playing video games. I mean, I can look down. It's a beautiful day here in New England. I'll go down. I'll go to lunch. I'll go past the park. There will be zero kids in the park. No one's playing pickup anything. And I don't
Yeah.
think the kids learn to move. Now, and I mean, we played made up games, stupid things, back and forth, like just crazy things. But I think that it taught kids how to move, and it got kids' body prepared for the rigors of different sports. I mean, even now, look at it. Look in the NFL. If you play fantasy football, how many of your players are out right now with hamstring and
Oh,
groin
dude, the,
strains?
yeah, the soft tissue injuries are crazy
Like,
right
how is that even possible? Like, not that someone tackled and killed them. They ran and boom, they're out.
now.
To
Mhm.
me, that's all preventable stuff. It's just
Yeah.
there's a whole lineage, yeah.
Yeah. And
That's another 10 episode show.
yeah, and I would like to touch on a couple things, in regards to parents. And it's crazy that we're doing this episode today. And about an hour before we came on, I was on Instagram and I saw they were doing the World Series media presentations or whatever, right? And they interviewed Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. And so the question was what pieces of advice could you give parents of young players?
Hmm.
And Mookie's advice was to play multiple sports and don't early specialize, because that teaches your body how to move in different patterns and just become more overall athletic, right?
Agreed. Hmm.
And then Freddie Freeman's advice for parents was don't be the overbearing emotional parent at ball games. He said, his son plays ball, and he said that, I see it all the time at my son's games, and I just, I don't say anything. I just sit back. And because he says, I know that my son feeds off of me. And if I'm getting upset or emotional, if he makes a mistake or yada, yada, that he's going to feed off of that. So I try to
Hmm.
be as cool and as calm. And I just want him to have fun, you know, playing, playing this great game.
That's
And
it.
that's it. So I thought that was really cool that I saw that
That's
before we came
fantastic.
on.
Fantastic
And
advice.
like, yeah, just don't be, look, just let them have fun
Hmm.
and let them play multiple sports. Like the sheer odds of your child playing Major League Baseball are less than 1%, much less, right? So just let them have fun being kids, and let them go experience other sports as well, because that's just going to help them overall athletically. And so I thought that was great.
And send them outside when it's nice.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's so many good things about play. You resolve conflict. You learn how. I mean, a million. We can go into that, but what I see, and I'm sure you see the same thing. Every time there's a kid comes in my office, they don't know how to squat. They violate the scapulohumeral rhythm. It's just these basic things that I think if they were doing, and what baseball or soccer or football does, it's not bad as itself. But if that's the only thing they're doing and they're not getting the proper advice there, then it just springboards, and that's
We
what it
talked
is.
about before, and my message to parents is like, look, like it's not, you know, as you said before, like our medical model is broken. All right. So you go, say your kid's elbow is hurting, and, you go to your primary, then you go see the ortho, and then they tell you to rest. And then they go, you rest, and then you go back to doing the same thing you're doing mechanically, and then it starts hurting again. It's like you go on this cascade of, doing the same thing over and over. Like, go find someone who's a sports specialist in whatever sport that is, have them evaluate you, get it fixed by somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yep. That's it.
Because it is so, in terms of throwing mechanics, it is so stupidly simple that, as my current client right now, one of my current clients right now, and like I said before, 3 weeks he's gone from UCL pain to no pain, throwing at 85% of his perceived effort, 90 feet repetitively.
We're human beings. I'll just end with this. We were designed to move, and the body knows how to move correctly. And when you put it on the correct path, things are going to happen like this. It's just going to happen. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Again, please like and subscribe. It helps us out. We appreciate it. Clay, how does somebody reach you if they need to reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me on Instagram at Clayham, ClayHamm. Send me a DM. Facebook, Clay Hammonds, Hammons. Shoot me a DM. I would love to talk, discuss anything. We can set up a strategy call. Anything we just want to save arms.
That's it.
We just want your kids healthy and to set them up for future success.
And I'm at Dr. K McGovern PT on Instagram and Twitter. Just look us up. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.